Alexandra, it had been 5 years. A message buzzed my phone. Alexandra, it's been a while. I'm getting married. I need $3,500 for the venue deposit. Please send it. My sister, after 5 years of silence. Hoping it wasn't bad news, I opened the message and read words so brazen they were almost unreal. I didn't feel so much anger as stunned disbelief. I almost laughed. After 5 years of nothing, that was the first thing she said? I took a deep breath, composed myself, and replied with cold facts. Congratulations on your wedding, but I can't send money. As independent adults, you need to resolve this on your own. The moment I hit send, I felt certain I'd made the right choice. To them, though, that was a signal. War. My name is Alexandra. I'm 28 and I run a graphic design studio in Portland, Oregon. I work on my own for good clients with trustworthy friends. I buy what I want with money I've earned. Since I left that house 5 years ago, I've finally had the quiet life I cherished. Until that notification made my phone vibrate. That afternoon I was absorbed in designing a client's logo when the brief buzz in my pocket pulled me out of focus. Seeing Christina on the screen made my heart jump unpleasantly. Minutes after I refused the $3,500, my phone exploded with calls and messages from relatives. Then, like a final blow, a joint message from my parents. If you can't even celebrate Christina, then pay up. If you won't give a wedding gift, you are no longer part of this family from this moment on. This wasn't just a demand for money. Something much bigger and more deeply rooted was playing out. The more their hysterical reactions poured in, the colder and clearer my mind became. They were panicking, unhinged. Why would declining a $3,500 request trigger such a meltdown? Their scramble made it seem as if they'd never imagined I'd say no. As if they were certain I couldn't refuse. A memory I had buried began to surface, slow and unwelcome. My second year in Portland, when my business was finally gaining traction and the dream of my own studio felt within reach. My mother had called in a small, weak voice. Your father's chronic illness has worsened. He might need emergency surgery. Could you help? Just a little, in case something happens. I was torn between the success I was finally holding and the nagging guilt of having left my family. Her repeated, "Thank you, and you're the only one I can count on," moved me. I said yes, but suggested a safer way. Why don't we open an account? An emergency fund for the family. I'll put in a little each month. It can be used only when things are truly bad. I meant it. Out of goodwill, I went to a local bank, opened a joint account, and mailed the cash card to my parents' house. Then I buried myself in work. Late-night design sessions, weekends preparing for competitions. Busyness made me forget the account existed. It was supposed to be for emergencies, after all. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe in them. What unfolded that day was something else entirely. My sister's audacious demand, the family's coordinated disownment, and the memory of the joint account aligning into the worst possible picture. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. I grabbed my coat and called one person, the only lawyer I trusted. "Victoria, it's Alexandra. Sorry to be so sudden. Can I come to your office right now?" Victoria Jones, my friend since college and one of Portland's top corporate attorneys, met me with calm and coffee. I told her everything. The message after 5 years, Christina's $3,500 demand, the family's threats, and the joint account I'd opened 3 years earlier out of pure goodwill. Victoria listened, never interrupting. When I finished, she said steadily, "Alexandra, thank you for telling me. You have done nothing wrong. This is not a personal spat. This looks like asset misuse. We'll handle it as a legal issue." She opened her laptop. "First, verify the facts. Put emotions aside. Give me the joint account info. Bank name, account number, ID details. If you can log in online, that's fastest." I produced the old passbook and my ID. Victoria's fingers flew across the keyboard. Passwords, two-factor authentication. Each step felt like peeling back another layer of hell. When the account page finally appeared, Victoria murmured, "I see." She clicked transaction history. What filled the screen was worse than anything I had imagined. A torrent of withdrawals. Not emergency bills, but thousands spent in the city where Christina lived. High-end boutiques, designer handbags and jewelry, resort getaways, dinner at trendy restaurants. Further back, large payments to credit card companies and loan providers near my parents' area. Victoria's calm analysis cut through the shock. "Your parents have hidden debts," she said. They've been using your Goodwill account to cover them. I felt betrayed, furious at myself for trusting and for not monitoring the account. Nausea mixed with anger. Then a sequence of large withdrawals caught our eyes. Payments to luxury wedding venues, renowned caterers, bespoke dress shops. Christina's $3,500 request was only the tip of the iceberg. She had already spent the money and then contacted me to cover it. The audacity froze me. Victoria downloaded the transactions and compiled them into a spreadsheet. When she leaned back, she looked at me with professional sternness and something like sympathy. "Are you ready?" I nodded. Over the past 3 years, the total withdrawn from this account is $112,000. The number hit like a punch. Money I'd earned through sleepless nights, more than I'd ever invested in my own future, had vanished. Sadness and shock gave way to a cold, rising anger. This was no longer a family argument. This was theft of my life. Walking back from the office, Victoria asked quietly, "Not what do you want me to do, what do you want?" I stopped and looked up at the Portland sky. "I'm not trying to sue them," I said. "I want them to understand down to their bones how costly it is to trample someone's goodwill. I am not their ATM." Victoria nodded. "Understood. We'll make sure your message is delivered as strongly as possible." Back at the studio, we treated it like a corporate strategy meeting. Phase 1. Stop the bleeding, prevent any further outflow. Phase 2. Notify the facts, legally communicate what we know. Phase 3. Present options and force them to face the consequences of their wrongdoing. I felt steadier than I had in days. The betrayal was raw, but so was my resolve. I would not let them take any more. This was, I reminded myself, a highly intelligent negotiation, a strategic effort to reclaim control of my life. That very night, Phase 1. Stop the bleeding was executed quietly but swiftly. Following Victoria's instructions, I called the bank's customer service. "I need to place an emergency freeze on a joint account. There's serious suspicion of misuse by one of the account holders. A lawyer is present and we're conducting an investigation. Please stop all transactions immediately to prevent further losses." The moment I mentioned the word lawyer, the representative's tone shifted. The call lasted barely 15 minutes. In that instant, the family's cash cow had been completely cut off at the root. But our operation wasn't done yet. Victoria had discovered that my parents had also used my personal information to sign up for several services, without my consent. "This is outright fraud, Alexandra," she said. Together, we contacted every service provider one by one. Again, the presence of a lawyer carried enormous weight. "These contracts were entered without the account holder's consent," Victoria stated firmly. "They are deemed unauthorized and will be terminated immediately. Any outstanding charges will be transferred to the responsible parties, your parents." By the time the calls were finished, I felt a strange sense of relief, as though all the stagnant poison inside me had finally drained out. The bleeding had stopped. They could no longer touch a single penny of my money. Next came Phase 2. It was time to show them the weight of their crimes, reflected in the clear mirror of the law. Phase 2. Notifying the facts. The following day we began. Victoria prepared a formal notice on heavy embossed letterhead bearing her law firm's logo. At the top, it boldly declared her full authorization to act on my behalf. The document listed in precise detail the total amount unlawfully withdrawn, $112,000, down to the last cent. It also included a record of the fraudulent service contracts signed in my name, along with a calm legal assessment explaining why these acts constituted fraud. The notice concluded firmly. "Please contact my office within 7 days of receipt. Failure to respond within this period will leave us no choice but to consider civil and criminal legal action." This was the final warning. Negotiate at the table or face court. We sent it via certified express mail. By now, they were likely receiving that cold, factual document while simultaneously realizing the gravity of their situation. Frozen accounts, cancelled services, and no more access to my money. 3 days passed. My phone stayed eerily silent. But Victoria's office was flooded with calls. First came my mother. "Put me through to Alexandra. How dare she send such a terrifying letter? What on earth is she thinking?" There were no apologies, no reflection, only outrage and selfish demands. Then Christina called. She reportedly sobbed, begging for forgiveness. I didn't mean to make you angry. The dress and the venue got cancelled. Please tell my sister to help me just this once. But her tears weren't for what she'd done. They were for herself, for her shattered dream. Finally, the day before the notice deadline, my father called Victoria directly. She's right, he said quietly. We were entirely wrong. May we meet to discuss this? His voice for the first time carried genuine gravity. Victoria agreed on strict conditions. My mother and sister would not attend. The time and place would be set by us. And this would be a negotiation, not an emotional plea. The negotiation. 3 days later, in Victoria's office conference room, I waited. When my father entered, I was struck speechless. He looked smaller, frilier, far older than I remembered. He sat across from us like a defendant, hesitant and unsure. Victoria began the meeting. We're here today to discuss a repayment plan for $112,000. First, do you dispute any of the facts outlined in our notice? His voice trembled. No. I don't dispute anything. Then he whispered, Alexandra, I'm truly sorry. I did an unforgivable thing to you. I have no words to make it right. I watched him in silence. Perhaps he meant it, but my heart didn't stir. Why did you do it? I asked flatly. He hesitated, then confessed. Failed investments, loans for friends, the mounting cost of vanity and pride. They hadn't rejoiced in my success. They had resented it, relying on my money to hide their own misery. I interrupted, calm but firm. Father, I didn't come here for apologies or memories. I came for a repayment plan. Show me your sincerity in numbers. If you can't, we move to the next step. He looked shocked. The daughter he once knew was gone. In her place sat an unyielding creditor. The documents he produced were bleak. Full repayment was impossible. In a strained voice, he begged for installments. Victoria remained impassive. She slid a prepared document across the table. Acknowledgement of debt and repayment agreement. She read each clause aloud. Article 1. The debtors, father, mother, and sister Christina, jointly acknowledge their obligation to repay Alexandra $112,000. Article 2. Repayment must be made monthly in the specified amount by the specified date. Article 3. Any missed payment results in immediate loss of installment privileges and allows full enforcement, including wage garnishment and asset seizure. Article 4. This contract holds full legal force as a notarized document. This was no family promise. It was binding law. Victoria's final question cut the air like a blade. Do you accept these terms, or shall we reveal all the facts in court? My father's hands trembled as he signed. I understand. I accept these terms. When all was finished, he whispered almost to himself. Alexandra, I'm truly sorry, and despite all this, please take care of yourself. Those were his last words to me. When he left, silence filled the room. Was this the right thing to do? Victoria asked softly. I exhaled and nodded. Yes. It was the right thing. There was no joy, no triumph, only the quiet relief of completion. I hadn't forgiven them, but I refused to let hatred drain my life any longer. That contract was a boundary, cold but necessary. They could no longer intrude on my world, and I would no longer enter theirs. Not reconciliation, coexistence. A truce drawn in ink and law. Good work, Alexandra, Victoria said gently, patting my shoulder. The warmth softened the frozen edges of my heart, just a little. The book. The agreement was honored. Every month, the payment arrived like clockwork. Strictly business, no emotion. Rumors trickled in. Christina's wedding was cancelled. My parents filed for bankruptcy. My father now worked as a security guard. My mother, part-time at a supermarket. And Christina, she lived alone in a small apartment, working days at a cafe, studying web design by night. Hearing this, my heart didn't stir. These were people I no longer knew. But my own life had shifted profoundly. That ordeal had scarred me more deeply than any financial loss. It taught me the cost of misplaced trust. I began therapy, a quiet journey to rediscover myself. Through it, I learned that my greatest fear wasn't losing money, but losing boundaries. True kindness isn't agreeing to every demand. Sometimes, love means having the courage to say no. That was my first step toward healthy, honest relationships. I realized I didn't need to chase the $112,000 I'd lost, because I had gained something infinitely more valuable. A calm, unshakable confidence that I would never again hand the steering wheel of my life to anyone else. Even now, their monthly transfers continue, reminders that the past wasn't a nightmare but a fact. Over dinner one evening, Victoria asked quietly, "If they ever repaid the full amount, would you see them again?" I paused, then shook my head. "No. Never again." Victoria smiled gently. "I see. That's your answer." "Yes," I said. "Forgiving them and letting them back into my life are two entirely different things. I chose to settle the past and move forward. They must build their own futures, on their own. The sky over Portland is wide and clear today. And I know my future can be just like it, free, limitless, and full of possibility. I believe that with all my heart."